Te he buscado tanto tiempo bajo lluvia.
A couple of weeks ago, I had a very interesting conversation around a paella pan with a friend who asked me what I'd been reading lately, and I didn't have any good answers. So he asked if I knew anything about Rene Girard, a French contemporary philosopher. He died 10 years ago or so. And his theory of mimetic desire, which, I kind of had to hide for a second the fact that I had no idea what the word mimetic meant. And the conversation continued nicely. He even mentioned that Bishop Barron had given a talk about him. So I said, mental note, I'll have to go look up Bishop Barron's talk about Rene Girard. In fact, it's linked in the description. But we were talking, and this idea that our desire isn't actually about the object of the desire. We don't want a truck because we've studied it carefully and everything about the truck matches what I want or need. No, we want a truck because our neighbor got a truck. We want a truck because the advertisement had these really happy people driving the truck. That our desire is imitating other people in its primary dynamic. So that when we desire an object, we're really just in relationship with another person who's desiring the object. I know that sounds very philosophical, but it's actually very much at the basis of all advertising. It's at the basis of all social media. It's why we say that children are age aspirational, because they want to be like, have the things like the children who are just a little bit older than them. It's the reason why social media works so well and why it's so detrimental in our lives. This dynamic of learning what we desire by seeing other people desire something, that Rene Girard would say is kind of unstoppable. That's our dynamic. I would like to hope that we can fudge it a little bit, at least, with our awareness, but that this dynamic always creates conflict. It's almost like it's designed to create conflict. So keeping up with the Joneses isn't really about keeping up with our neighbors. It's about making them jealous, right? There's an effort in the midst of this that the two kings who want access to the same waterway get in a war over that waterway. And this sense of who we are in relationship to one another and our shared desires creates a certain tension. You'll forgive all of my philosophizing here, but I think we would recognize that there's a certain truth to this. We're told not to covet our neighbor's goods, but it's not just about not wanting other people's stuff. It's about this tension that's created when we become jealous of each other, right? Even in the old days of the Cold War, when we were broadcasting into Russia, we were just showing them all the beautiful things that people in the United States had so that they would get jealous, right? I mean, it wasn't like we had a great philosophy of freedom that we were trying to share of the human person and human dignity. We were just showing them all of the luxuries of the West so that they would want them. I might oversimplify, but there's some truth to that. So, this tension, according to Rene Girard, in world history and in the history of literature, is resolved many times in a religious or ritual format by the community coming together and identifying a scapegoat on whom to blame for this tension, and there's a peace on the other side of the resolution. Again, very philosophical, but the fact is, some famous scholars said that the only thing the two scholars ever agree on is how bad the third scholar's work is. That we can almost always agree on something negative about somebody else, even if we're fighting among ourselves, and we find some relief to the tension by turning against someone else who we've shared either in a very social or ritual way, the blame for the tension that we created. And there's some notice, Bishop Barron notices that this is oftentimes the underlying motive and behind a lot of ritual in religious experiences. But Rene, Girard, and Bishop Barron both point out that something different happens in Christianity when the scapegoat is the one ritualized, not those who are ritualizing the scapegoat, where God himself gives in love to overcome the tension of the community. We don't have to do all of these things. I just wanted to give you a really fast introduction. If you want to learn more of this philosophy, do. But I think there's something helpful here as we look at wisdom and Eucharist. The church today gives us our second to last great reading in our Eucharistic series of John chapter 6. Next week will be even better. We've come to the high point of Eucharist, and we'll move to the faith of the apostles next week. But in this gift of God, mimicking the gift from wisdom's table for those who will come to eat. And the difference between the foolishness that we often arrive at in mimetic theory, when we allow ourselves to have our desires formed by influencers in social media, by our celebrities, our sports stars, our neighbors, where advertising forms our sense of self, foolishness, right? Or at wisdom's table, that we would receive some deeper understanding, which as we move into Eucharist, we'll realize is love. And so we're invited to this Eucharistic sacrifice where Jesus gives us his body and blood, where his body is broken as bread broken and given to us to eat, where his blood is poured out for us, where he becomes the scapegoat in love. And he shows the foolishness of this mimetic desire, of this tension, of this jealousy. He shows the foolishness of it all as he shows us the heart's true desire, which is love, to love and to be loved. And I say all of this because I pray that here at Wisdom's table, we will come to recognize more and more deeply what is worth desiring and what is the foolishness in Paul's letter, the wine on which we get drunk instead of the wine, the blood that gives us life. That we would recognize more and more what is worth desiring, what is worth fighting for, and the silly, foolish things that create tension in our lives, that are distractions, that just because somebody even more foolish than I wants it, now I want it too. That we might overcome some of our need to keep up with or make jealous our friends on social media. And that we might hear in this table of wisdom, receiving an outpouring of God's love, be more ready ourselves to break down the tension with the gift of our love, and with less foolishness, to be wise, to have the gift of wisdom in the formulation of our
Mi vida es búsqueda y encuentro.